Hi, welcome back to our Spanish adventures. Today I'm back in the man cave with the Royal Enfield Super Meteor 650, and my project at the moment is to remove the pillion seat and make and fit a rider backrest. So first of all, I've already unbolted the pillion seat, so we take that out the way. I'll remove the two bolts that hold this down. So the plan is to have the backrest here, and I'm also going to make a Fender finisher, I believe they call it, or a Fender rack, solo Fender rack. I'm going to make that at the same time. But first of all, now I had a look on the internet to see if I could actually buy a rider backrest, and there's two. Jill will put a link up so you can have a look what I found. They're very expensive and I didn't like the look of them. So quite particular on how the bike looks. I know that's subjective, it's my bike and I want it to look a certain way. So those of you that have a sharp eye have probably already noticed I've removed the pillion pegs also, and I've removed the two grab handles. I've also fitted myself some tank pads. I cleaned the tank, cleaned the paintwork up and simply put them in a position that you require. So I had a good look on the internet and found this. Now I've taken the vinyl cover off while I'm working on the backrest pad. I didn't want to damage the vinyl cover. So this, I like the shape of this. It was the right price. It was 35 euros. Jill will put a link up for you so you can see where I purchased it from. It's for Harley Davidson. I just thought that this will sit somewhere here and it'll look the part. My plan is to make a bracket that bolts onto the two positions here where the seat is held down, and then is bolted onto the back of this. So it'll sit somewhere like this. So first of all, I made a cardboard template, and the cardboard template is simply where it fits onto the bike. The first angle is the rake of the back of the seat, and then the second angle, this one, was whatever suits my back and was comfortable for me. The reason why this is this shape is because it follows the shape on the back of this, and the fixing points are all lined up, so like so. So I then transferred this to some very heavy gauge metal. Now I've used 6mm steel. I think you'd get away with 5mm, but it's surprising how much pressure, when you sit and lean back or push back on the backrest, how much pressure that it puts onto this. I noticed with some of the other ones that you can buy, the two that I've showed you earlier on the internet, they're connected to the Fender rack or Fender finisher, and I think that gives it strength. 6mm I think is perfect for what I'm using this for. So all I did was I cut out onto a flat piece of steel, and then I cut both sides of the metal and simply put it in the vise and bent it. So the first angle was straightforward, it follows the seat. The second one, I cut both sides and then bolted the backrest pad onto this and then sat on the bike, and then I could push this and bend it to wherever suited my back best. As you can see, I've welded it all up already. Hopefully I have three options. I can have just the rider backrest pad, I can have the pillion seat back on if I wish, and then I can also have the Fender rack stroke finisher. I don't have to have this on at all, I could just have the Fender finisher on there. I purchased a couple of lengths of this, is 4mm sprung steel I believe, and 2 lengths of this was 8 euros, and all I'm simply doing is bending the steel to match the arc of the fender, and to do that I put a piece of masking tape along the top here so I don't damage my paintwork. Simply bent this around the car wheel, just use that to get a curve and get started, and then just to finalise the shape I used the corner of the bench and I just kept pushing it round. So I hadn't got any flat spots, and I've got a mark on here. That's pretty much the length that this will go to. So they'll go like that. So I'm going to make 4 of these. I haven't decided whether just curve the end or whether to put like an arrow or something, not sure yet. But 4 of these, 2 pieces will come this way which bolt on to the fender, and that will be my fender rack. So a little bit of work to do. I'll get cutting these up next, and I'll start priming and finishing off the bracket. So this is my tip of the day. I find it very difficult to get this Royal Enfield on its centre stand. Now I know a few people on the internet have commented, and the replies they get is, well, it's just about the technique. I still find it very difficult. So I've made this. This is just a quick mock-up to see if the idea actually works. So all I do is place it under the back wheel. And as I mentioned earlier, I took the handles off, and the handles are very useful to move the bike and lift it onto the centre stand. But my pannier rail brackets are very, very strong, so I can just put my hand down here and use that. So all I do is roll the bike back onto the ramp, like so, put my foot down on the centre stand, and no lifting, as you can see, and I just push it. It's that easy. Let the bike come forward, keep your foot on the centre stand, and now the bike's on the centre stand. That for me is really easy. If you want to spin the back wheel, you can pull out the little ramp and you can do your maintenance, your cleaning, or whatever you want. Getting it off the centre stand is even easier. Just put your foot underneath part that sticks out of the stand and just roll the bike forward, and it's straight off back on the side stand. So as I mentioned earlier, an option of having the pillion seat on as well. So I thought before I go any further we would try that. As you can see, it works. It's a little difficult to get it on, for a couple of reasons. As you're probably aware, to bolt this pillion seat on, you have to fold back the foam and put in those 2 bolts. So it works. I would shorten the bolts because there's a lot of threading goes on to get those 2 bolts in there. Shorten those bolts, and also you may well notice what it's done is cantered the seat up, so it's not level. That's because of the thickness of the 6mm steel there. So you can compensate very easily with that, and just put 6mm spacer under the 2 bolt holes at the back. That would lift that back up. That's not a problem. So I'll just quickly bolt this back on so you can see. It's important to use a very flat-headed bolt because it'd be very close to the vinyl of the pillion seat. But I'll just pop one in the centre for now, just so you get an idea. So if you was assembling this with the pillion seat, you would want to put the backrest pad on to the bracket first, and then the bracket on the bike, and then the pillion seat on top. So it's doable. It's not something you want to take on and off every other day, but if you're taking a pillion, it's a regular thing, then it works perfectly. I've now finished cutting the 4 pieces and curved them, so they're all the same arc. I've also cut the joining pieces. I didn't realise, but I've had to put an arc on these as well because the fender goes the other way as well. So the holes are for tack welding. I shall weld it from the back. The idea of that is so I don't mess this surface up, and that'll be easy to finish off and paint. So these will just go on here like so. Hopefully you can see that. I'll weld that up. My plan is to then just cut the edge of these outer ones round to follow that pattern that we have on the bottom of the tank. So these will come in and just curve and finish like the pinstripe on the tank, hopefully mimic that sort of pattern. But at the moment I've got a lot of finishing off to do here before I weld it together, because it will make it very difficult to get in there to clean all the edges off. So that's it for now. I'll go and get welding. So I've just finished welding this up. You can see the spot welding from the back, and then if you look at the front, hopefully that will hold it. That's penetrated, you can see the heat's come through. I'm not a welder, I'm actually a carpenter by trade. But hopefully when that's cleaned up, a little bit of touching up maybe, quite a lot of cleaning up to do, but I'll sort that next. So again, before I go any further, I'll just offer it up. Obviously not cleaned it up at all, but to make sure it all fits and goes in place. As you can see, I've already put some primer on the bracket for the backrest pad. I'm trying to avoid too many nuts and bolts showing, to keep it as clean as possible. And I'll explain later on how I'm going to fix down the back end, and that will leave just the 2 nuts at the front showing that holds everything on. I've got a little bit more of a curve here to match this on the tank. So once I start cleaning this up, I'm going to cut these, bring these round a little bit, and then obviously square them off. Okay, so I'm making progress. I've painted up the parts that I've made so far. While I'm waiting for that to dry, I thought I would turn my attention to the nuts and bolts. Previously, I generally paint. I would spray paint these to get them black, but I've seen a technique used and I thought I'd give that a go, so that's what I'm doing at the moment. So I can turn that into that. So I'll show you how I do it. So first of all, I've got some WD-40 and there's a little container here. I'll just top this up. Just regular WD-40. Now there's a chemical reaction that occurs. I'm going to heat this up with the blowtorch. When it's glowing red, I'm going to dunk it into the WD-40. That changes the colour. There is quite a lot of fumes and stuff that come off that, so just to be safe, I will put a mask on, wear the mask. I don't want to breathe any chemicals in. And obviously also, I'll put a glove on so I don't burn my hand. So I'll get myself set up and I'll show you how we do it. So all we simply do, hope you can hear me all right because this is muffling the sound. And then we dunk it in there. As you can see, it's turning it black. To get it as black as that, I just did the same thing twice. And again with these little donuts, I did them twice. So I'll give this one a second go and I'll do the rest. Anyway, moving on, it is always handy to have a fire extinguisher in your man cave just in case. So, a bit more progress. I've finished painting everything up, which is all ready now to assemble. And if you remember earlier, I mentioned about when I fit the rack on, I didn't want to see too many fixings. So I've come up with an idea on how to hide the fixings on the back section, and then I only have the 2 nuts visible at the front. I'll also explain what I've done here. So originally I thought I was going to have to hold the backrest up, hold the fender rack up, and then get one of the bolts and drop it all through, and I've got some washers to put in as well. That was just too difficult. I knew that I was going to have a problem assembling it. So what I've done is got a couple of these and I've threaded them through from underneath, a little bit of Loctite and tightened them up. That means then I can just fit everything over the top, which is easy to work with. Now on the back of the rack, again, I've used 2 of these. I've threaded them into the captive nut and adjusted them to the correct height, and then put a lock nut underneath the fender that holds them in place. I've put a little bit of felt here just so I don't damage the paintwork as I slide the fender rack on. And all I did was quite simply made myself a template, used 4mm steel, copied this onto 4mm steel. And the idea is, you'll see in a minute, but the idea is the rack slides on there like that and the back's hooked in. It's very similar to the way the seat, the pillion seat hooks on, it just comes in from the other way. So that's all set up ready, and then all I did was transferred this onto my steel and then welded that onto the back rail of the fender rack. Now the top rail is curved, follows the arc, and this one is straight, which gives me sufficient space in here for that head of that bolt just to slide in and hook in. So that's it. So the only 2 visible nuts I'll have when I'm finished is the 2 that hold everything on the bike. So a couple of things. So I've now bolted that bracket to the backrest pad, put the seat on. I'm going to put this on, I'm going to assemble this up next. This I couldn't curve, I couldn't follow the arc of the fender, it's too thick. So what I'm going to have to do is put a couple of washers just on there, so when this goes down it doesn't touch the fender, it will just clear that. So that goes down on there, so that's sat on those 2 washers. So it's quite simple, quite easy to assemble this. So bearing in mind my 2 slots underneath, and what I'll do also is, because I'm a bit particular, I'll put another stainless steel washers, just another washer on there. So then very simply slide that down and that's on. So a couple more washers on top. And my dome head nuts, just to finish that off. I'll tighten them up in a minute, but that's it. That's my backrest pad and my fender rack stroke finisher. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. I've enjoyed immensely making all the parts for the bike, whether it be the pannier rails, any bits and pieces. For me, it's part of owning a motorcycle. So in the meantime, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.